My name is Russell Spatz. I'm an alcoholic.
There you go.
And I am a member
South Dixie Birchville group.
of both those groups. It doesn't matter. Whatever. So, and it's good to be. By the way, is Arthur still here?
No, still not.
Well, I was so glad I showed up. I haven't seen him in years.
Right on time.
Wow. Right, absolutely.
Give it up for Stevie B.
That was great, Stevie. He's wonderful. Okay, let me just find this thing. I'm looking for something. So, it's good. So, oh, by the way, I'm sorry Arthur's left, but he came here just to announce the termites. Ray, I got a message from Ray O'Keefe. God bless him. He said finally he's doing service. I'm sorry Arthur left. How far the mighty have fallen. But he's a good guy. By the way, I just want you to know, because as many people do know, I may not know much about AA, but I am a termite expert, and we hope everything works out with the termites. But I want you guys to not be too concerned about the termites buzzing around here. These are alky termites. They think they're fucking butterflies. Just wanted you to know that. Yeah, that's the way they are. So, it's been an interesting month. I was gone for 2 weeks, and on a cruise that I didn't want to go to, but I went on a cruise, and so I missed 2 weeks here. So I said to Jimmy, I said, well, just have somebody fill in and do 6 or 7, 8 or 9, or whatever the hell they were supposed to do. And he said, no, we want you to do the whole thing. So I thought I was going to get out of here quicker, And then I missed one other week or something like that. So he tells me tonight I'm on step 8.
You have 4 more weeks.
I thought I was on step 14 already. This is being dragged out. Okay, well, you're a loss. In any event, so I'll do the best. We'll figure out something. So in any event, I'm going to read 2 paragraphs. I might have done this before. I can't remember because of the Alzheimer's, but I'm going to read 2 paragraphs to you. I could read more than 2 paragraphs, less than 2. It doesn't matter. I'm just going to make a point. First paragraph is on page 60. Being convinced. It's important. Being convinced. You know what? If you want to be rocking in fourth dimension, 2 things you need to know. You need to know the great fact. And the great fact is that God is the central fact of your life, whatever that means. Not even God as you understand him, just God. And the second thing is, you must be convinced that he lives in your heart and mind in a way which is indeed miraculous, doing for you what you can't do for yourself, whatever that means. The book of James, which was one of the books they found absolutely essential in AA, if you want to follow the path, says if you want wisdom, not intelligent, wisdom, all you have to do is ask God. Not even God as you understand, just God. Just make sure you're asking God. Make sure you're asking the right God. Make sure because there is only one who has all power, and that one is God. So make sure whatever God you're asking, it's the right one. You don't want to be going to the wrong grocery store. You make sure. He says, ask God. If you want wisdom, ask God. But when you ask him, you must be convinced. You can't have any doubt, whatever that means. Because the man who has any doubt about God, can expect to receive nothing. Nothing. This is, by the way, one of the books they found absolutely essential. Nothing. No doubt. That man is like a double-minded man, unstable in all his ways. Sometimes you don't realize, sometimes in AA and this thing we're doing here, well, you got to forgive me. You see, the thing is, I'm in my
45th.
I'm in my 45th year of sobriety, and I look at things differently. Not because I'm smarter, actually, because I'm dumber. You can't imagine how fucking bright I was at one time. I knew everything. My mind was so full of facts and figures and everything I think I knew. I knew everything. Well, that's all I knew, just everything. So when you know everything, you don't have to learn anything, and you got all these thoughts. You think not drinking is a big deal? How about not thinking? You don't know what it's like when it's 3 o'clock in the morning. You're thinking and you can't stop thinking, and you're thinking about the same thing over and over again and stuff like that, and then you think about what a piece of shit you are, and you're 5 years sober. You think about what a loser you are. I see the 8th step differently. I see the 7th step. I see things differently. Not because I'm bright, because I got stupid. There's a thing about getting rid of old ideas. The old ideas, I believe this is just my opinion. You don't have to buy into this crap. I believe the old ideas is everything you think you know now. You understand? Everything you think you know now. It's like you're listening to somebody and you think that guy is freaking crazy. And then one day you got 16 years and you either drink again or you want to kill yourself. And all of a sudden, the guy doesn't sound so crazy anymore. And then you start talking like that guy. And you realize the guy you thought was crazy is not crazy, and you get rid of an old idea and you get a new idea. It's strange how this thing works. Because if we're insane and we can't recognize, we can't tell the difference between the true or the false, or alcoholic life and thinking it seems only normal, we're comfortable in our insanity, in the way we think. So here's a paragraph. Being convinced, there it is. We were at step 3. You guys have done step 3. And I wish step 3 was the solution. Wouldn't that be great? Everybody does step 3. Did you know that? Everybody does step 3? And 90% of the people drink again. How's that possible? How is it possible to turn your will and your life over to the care of God as you understand Him and be convinced and drink again? How's that possible? How's that? I mean, seriously, the God thing is a big thing. How's it possible to turn your will and your life over to the care of God? What do they say in the big book? They said, tell me if I'm wrong about this. The only step you have to do 100% is the first step. I'm not so sure.
I'm not so sure.
Maybe there's something else you got to do 100%. Maybe the thing that you got to do 100% is the thing that'll ensure that you've done all the steps 100%. And maybe it has nothing to do with drinking. I don't know. And maybe there's a lot of people think that drinking is the 100% thing, and they focus on that. And they focus on God as you understand Him. Whereas Bill Wilson said, because he couldn't accept God, as Bill Wilson said, I could use that as a beginning. But then he, 20 years sober, he was still beginning. And AA became this God.
Yep.
Now, I happen to think, for all those people that want to get mad at me, I had a whole bunch of them this weekend. Hated my guts because they elevated Bill Wilson to sainthood. And they've never heard anybody say, I'm not saying anything bad about Bill Wilson. I'm actually helping Bill Wilson out because he wanted everybody to know when he was 21 years sober and he wrote Emotional Sobriety the next year, he wanted everybody to know that he had screwed up. I mean, I don't know whether I could do that,
You You will.
Yeah, I will. I'll do right at this meeting. I'll do it. I knew he had screwed up because with between the LSD and all the other stuff, and he realized. You read that. You really need to read what he wrote at 21 years when he said, "I got the whole thing wrong. I became dependent upon everything else except God, even AA." The what's that thing that we all worship? That committee, the conference. Those 20 or 30 people that had less than 15 years. The conference. I don't know. Bill Wilson's not my God. The trustees are not my God. They don't have all power. The conferences are my God. I hope one day you figure out who God really is, because it's important. Because unless you're convinced, you know what I mean? Unless you're convinced, that man should receive nothing. Well, because half measures avail you nothing. You stand at a turning point. Sometimes the turning point takes 15, 20 years. So here we go. So I've read the big book 20 million times. I've memorized a lot of it. Not because I was out to memorize. I've just read it so many times, heard it so many times. Read the 12 and 12 a gazillion times. Done these step series all sorts of times. Read the Bible and read all that stuff. And Dr. Bob and Good Old Timers is an incredible book that a lot of people don't read. And so here's 2 paragraphs. I'm just going to read them and then say something. And you can accept it or not accept it. This is just the way I'm thinking. So no sense being mad at me. Well, be mad at me. It's okay. Good for you. Because then, be mad at me. Really, I'm serious. Because then you'll be thinking about me for 3 or 4 weeks. I won't be thinking about you, but you'll be thinking about me. And it gives me a great deal of pleasure to know that you're hating me. Then you can't get... Yeah. But here's the deal. Here's what I'm saying. Whatever you hear from me, even now I go to like 3 AA meetings every day. And sponsoring, doing all this stuff. Just trust me on this. Everything you say, I've been going to a meeting, like 50,000 meetings, doing all this. Everything you hear from me, I am a product of Alcoholics Anonymous. I mean, what you're looking at, for good or bad, is some guy who's been going to a gazillion meetings, sponsoring people, doing all this stuff here in AA, who was once 5 years sober, and once 10 years sober, and once 15 years sober, one 20 years sober, one 30 years, and fucked up in every way you could possibly fuck up except drinking. So I'm a product of Alcoholics Anonymous. Don't get mad at me. Get mad at this big book and God and my sponsors and Ray O'Keefe, So I'm just saying the law of averages says, I think, if I'm a product of Alcoholics Anonymous, then even the law of averages say I might be right once in a while. So I'm just going to give you my opinion. So this says, being convinced, we were at step 3, which is that we decided, whatever that means. If you decide, then you can undecide. To turn our will and our life over to God as we understood Him. What if we don't understand Him? What if you don't really understand Him? What happens then? Well, I guess somewhere along the way, the fucking wheels fall off. I mean, that's how you figure that one out. You know what I mean? You're doing all these things for 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 years. You're doing all these lists and all this crap. You turn your life over to God. You're asking all this stuff. And then all of a sudden you drink again, or you drug again, or you do something crazy again. And you say, well, what's the problem? Why did that happen? It says, well, maybe you didn't understand Him. Maybe you only thought you understood Him. Maybe instead of following God, you were following, get this, ready for this? Here's a possibility. Maybe instead of knowing God, because there is only one that has all power, that one is God. That's the goal. You want to find Him. Maybe you thought you were following God, but you weren't following God. Maybe you were just following God as you understand Him. Maybe the God you understand isn't God at all. Maybe it's the God how about this? Maybe it's the God you feel comfortable with. Maybe it's like an easy, nice, never hurt me, forgive me all the time, He doesn't mind I do this. would never be sarcastic, never punch me in the gut. Sort of like a really nice sponsor that doesn't do shit for you. Maybe that's the God you want. Doesn't hurt you. A God that doesn't hurt your feelings. God that doesn't crush you, or give you trials and shit like that. So being convinced, we're at step 3, which is that we decided to turn our will and our lives over to God as we understood him. And then it says this. Here's the great thing. This is the next thing it says right after that. Just what do we mean by that? Question mark. So what do you think they mean by that? What do you think I mean by that? And just what do we do? That's just one paragraph. That's not even the whole book. That's not even all the books. That's just one paragraph. So here's another paragraph. Here's a good one. I could pick 2 separate paragraphs. They're all over the book. Page 164 must be important. This is how they end it. Our book is meant to be suggestive only. We realize we know only a little. Now that's got to make you feel good. The guys that wrote the book, the 3.5 years. The guys you're following, or else you're going to die. These guys are the guys that know everything. They've read everything and everything. This is what they say about themselves. We only know a little. Well, that's got to make you feel really good. You know what I mean?
It's reassuring.
We have no idea what the fuck we're talking about. Your life depends on us. You're screwed. God will constantly disclose more to you and to us. God will constantly. So who does the disclosure? You don't learn shit. You think you're going to work your way to get the disclosure? You're either going to get it disclosed or not disclosed, and God's going to be doing the disclosing, and maybe sometimes God is disclosing stuff to you, but you just ain't listening. You know, talk to the hand because, like the face ain't listening, that kind of thing. Maybe he's disclosing to you even now. Maybe he's disclosing to you even now. He's so crazy, he might even be disclosing crap through me. Maybe he's disclosing something, but you're not listening or you're not understanding. Ask him in your morning meditation what you can do each day for the man who is still sick. The answers will come if your own house is in order, whatever that means. But obviously you cannot transmit something you haven't got. You can't talk about something you haven't got. So what do you need to get? And how do you get it? I don't know. See to it that your relationship with him is right. What does that mean? See to it your relationship with him is right. Is your relationship with him right? Well, how do you know your relationship with him is right? How do you know who he is? Do you even know who he is? Do you even care who he is? I said to my sponsor, my sponsor said to me once, he says, how you doing? I said, I feel great. Anybody ever tell somebody, whether you have 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, you ever tell somebody, I feel great? Feel great. You can feel great at 1 year. You can feel great at 1 month. You can feel great at 10 years. You know what my sponsor said to me? He was an evil man. I said, I feel great. He said, you must be getting your own way. I said, I am. You know when you don't feel great? When you're not getting your own way. You know when that happens? About 90% of your life. No matter how much time you get. See to it your relationship with him is right, and great events will come to pass for you and countless others. This is the great fact. Now, I'll tell you what, you can do all the steps and you do everything. I'm not against step. I'm a big step guy. I did all the steps. I did them all. Still do them and blah, blah, blah. But the bottom line is, what I just read you was a great fact. That was one paragraph. I read you 2 paragraphs out of the big book. Now, let me tell you a little secret. Many, many people read the big book and the 12 and 12. But the secret is not really whether you read the big book. The secret ultimately is whether you understand the paragraphs. Everybody reads the big book and they have their own favorite things. Acceptance is the answer to all my problems. Just throw things out that you could say that sounds good and they even help you out. But the secret is not in the book. The secret is in the paragraphs. So I just read you 2 paragraphs that you've read before a million times, but I read them slowly. And as I read them, I said, what does that mean? What does that mean? Some of you said, I don't know what it means. So then I made a few comments and you said, and maybe I said something that you never thought of before. Imagine if you actually understood the big book and every paragraph in the big book instead of just the book. Who knows what you'd be thinking or how you'd be taking things. You know what I mean? It'd be an interesting deal. So in any event, I went to this retreat this weekend. We did a retreat, and Sheldon was very helpful there, and there's a lot of people. We had about 50 men, and Sheldon said to me, Sheldon likes saying things to me. He likes making fun of me, and which I enjoy actually. And so I did like 6 or 7 talks or something to this, at this retreat up in Tampa. These guys, and he said, Russell, well, after I did my first talk, I go up there. I do these retreats sometimes, and this is not the first time this happened to me. Sheldon took me aside because there was murmuring in the audience. It was at a Franciscan retreat house, Franciscan monks and all that sort of stuff, or something. I don't know. Were they Franciscans? When were they?
Yes.
Crosses all over the wall, stuff like that. And that's how. So Sheldon took me aside after the first session, and he said, they're really upset with you. And I'm thinking, great. He says, yeah, I mean, the way you're talking to them, you're not in the fucking 12-step room, They don't need to hear all that. And he said to me, and then another guy came up to me, another guy who organized the thing, and asked me, he says, the way they're talking, you're talking a lot about God in a room where there's crosses all over the wall.
That wasn't me.
That was you. That was your backup guy. And he said they're really upset. And he says, and then he looked at me because he wanted to know what I said. I said, I'm just starting. I'm going to double down. Double down on that deal. And so I did. It's an interesting thing, What happens is, somewhere along the line, there's a promise that says you lose fear of people and of economic insecurity. And I want to say, but I don't mean this. I'm going to say it to you. I want to say I feel sorry for you if you still worry about what people think about you. And worried about economic insecurity all the time and all that sort of stuff. But the truth is, I also want to tell you that I lived that way for 25 years sober. I want you to know that if you have that dis-ease, because the drinking is just a symptom of the disease. It's not even part of the disease. The real disease centers in our mind, not our body. And what does the real disease look like? The real disease looks like self-hatred. That's what the 8th step is all about. By the way, I wanted to throw that in, so this could be technically an 8th step meeting. No, but that is what the 8th step is all about. What the 8th step and the 9th step is all about, it's about you, although you don't understand this, thinking that you're a piece of shit and you ought to die because you don't deserve to live. People do the 8th step and the 9th step, and they do all these things. If I did a drunk-a-log, I tell you how I left my first wife because I wanted to get laid after 5 years and she was a good woman. I tell you how I abandoned my children. I would tell you all the bad shit I did, and I would also tell you that when I did the bad shit, I didn't even give a crap about anybody, and I didn't even think about them. You know what I mean? And I would somehow do what alcoholics do, be able to excuse their actions. Like, I was too young, I shouldn't have gotten married. I give myself an excuse, so I would do something in my mind to make me feel okay about being an asshole. You understand what I'm saying? Because when you look back on your list and you see how you treated people, you see, all of a sudden you come to yourself and say, I was an asshole. You know what I mean? But it's not like you didn't know you were an asshole. It's just that you somehow, because of this insanity, are able to do horrible things to people and not even see it because you're so self-centered. But every once in a while, you start thinking about what you did, even subconsciously, and then you say something like this: I need a fucking drink. And you drink not because you're happy, you drink because you're a piece of shit. And you feel uncomfortable with yourself and you feel uncomfortable with people and what they think about you. So you whack down the drink and it's like, and all of a sudden you don't worry about what the group thinks about you. You think you own the group. You think you own the group because it wipes out the guilt. So now you come to AA and you're sober with the God of your understanding. You're going to meetings, you're not drinking, so you're well. But the problem is you're still doing crappy things to people. And you're still living a crappy life. And it's not because you're a bad person, it's because you're a sick person. You don't know what it is to live a God-fearing life. You don't really know what it is to love God. I'm talking about myself, by the way. This has nothing to do with you, unless you think it has something to do with you. I'm just talking about myself. So there's no sense getting mad, you know. So what you think you're living a godly life, but you're not. And then what you find is as you're going along this AA thing at 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever it is, you find, believe it or not, has anybody ever found this? That even after you're sober, life is fucking rough. Have you noticed that life is rough? It's rough out there. It's rough at 20 years. It's rough at 15 years. You know, I've been in a situation where they got 10, 15 years, they're doing stuff and everything, and somehow something comes along in their life, and they can't stop thinking. All their thoughts are bad stuff about themselves and other people, and they can't get to sleep, and they wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning. It's about money, property, prestige. They're worried about what if this happened? What does that happen? What are people going to think about me if this? What if they know that? You ever find yourself incessantly thinking about yourself? Wow, man, I'll tell you when you really start thinking about yourself, when you hurt somebody's feelings, you do something stupid and everything, and you do it and you screw them over and you say, well, screw them. Screw them. You know, and you tell yourself, what do you do? What do we do? Well, what do alcoholics do? Oh, you tell yourself, say, I don't give a shit what they think about me. You're 5 years old, you say, I don't give a fuck. Fuck them. I didn't sign up for this shit. I don't give a shit. They're wrong. I'm never apologizing. And then all of a sudden you find yourself sitting down. You ever find yourself sitting down and doing like a 4-step list or an inventory list or an ACE or whatever it is, and then all of a sudden you find yourself making stupid amends because you're going to blow your brains out and commit suicide because you're such a piece of shit. And then you do that. You ever do that? You make amends and then you feel better? And that's your life in AA. That's an AA sober life for the first 25 years. You become an expert in hurting people and making amends and feeling better. Because you've got these tools. Isn't that what they call them? Tools. Tools are used to fix something that's broken. And you is broken. Finally. You are broken.
That makes sense.
You used to be broken and drunk scotch is a tool, by the way. You used to be broken and drunk. Now you're broken and sober. And just because you put the plug in the jug, that doesn't unbreak you. Now you're broken, and now what's even worse is now you're broken and you can't use the booze, so it's either suicide, drinking, or doing these stupid steps that you don't want to do. You know what I mean? But that all goes away at 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 10 years,
20 years.
20 years. So you don't become sinless, but you sin less.
Thank you.
So as you go along, and somehow the sinning less has to do with not only working the tools and all, but it has something. Okay, here's the thing: it has something to do. Ready with it for this? with understanding the paragraphs. Understanding the paragraphs. Like people will say, I hear people in AA meetings say stuff that I know is not true, but sounds great. Sounds great. So everybody says, oh man, that sounds so profound. I can't love myself. I can't love others until I love myself. What fucking horseshit. What horseshit. It's always about you, isn't it? It's always about you. You got to get well. No, what it really is you hate your fucking self, but you learn to love and help other people, and one day you wake up and you actually feel good about yourself. But that's not what they say. That's what the big book says. You love and you work with other people. We don't give a shit how you feel about yourself. Bill Wilson said when I was 18 months sober, he said, lucky I was doing this thing. I was going down to the hospital every day because I was driven with waves of self-pity. I'd go down and I'd talk to a man there. I was amazingly lifted up on my feet. It's a way of living that works. You don't say anything about the guy I talked to. Who the fuck cares? You know what I mean? It's not about him. It's about helping other people. But that's an old way of thinking. The old way of thinking is if I go to a psychiatrist, if I pop a pill, if I just think about myself more, I'll get better, and then I'll love everybody, and everything will be wonderful. And what's really going on is, sure you feel good because you're getting your own way, but most of the time you don't get your own way, and that's when you feel crappy. So the truth is, you never really escape from alcoholism. You're in bondage, but you don't even. Here's what you don't understand: you're 15 years sober, and you may have a few months or a few weeks of doing okay, but you're 15 months sober, and of course every day is patting you on the back because you're picking up the damage stuff, and you don't understand. This is what happened to me. I got to 10 years. I'm sponsoring everything inside. I'm doing everything you're supposed to do in AA, and I feel like crap. And there's a point in time where you go against a brick wall. It's the brick wall time when you're doing everything and somehow it stops working. And you can't understand because you can't understand. And you know why you can't understand it? Because you never understood the two paragraphs I read. Because you say God as you understand him. You say the Serenity Prayer, you say the Lord's Prayer. They say, do you believe in God? You say you do. But have you really abandoned yourself to God? Are you really convinced? Or is it just that you formed a sort of God as you understand it, but you don't have to deal with him that much or focus on him that much? And you focus on him so little that you never talk about him. And the reason you never talk about him is because we're not supposed to do that in AA. Because it upsets people, and God knows you don't want to upset people. You don't want not to like you. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so what that basically tells you is you're filled with the corrosive thread of fear. And what the big book says, we never apologize for God. We stand firm with God. All men of faith, convincing faith, have courage. They trust their God. We never apologize for God. Instead, we let him demonstrate through our testimony to other people what he's done for us. And once we begin to outgrow fear, and most people, they never outgrow fear because they never talk about God. And they never talk about God because they really don't believe in God, because they don't think God's the way, because their God is their stomachs, their God is a car, their God is people in AA liking them, their God is AA, which is what Bill Wilson's God was. That's what he said. I became enamored with the fact that look at AA and how everybody's looking at me in AA, and it's all about AA. And so he read the book, but he never understood it was all about understanding those two paragraphs. Because nobody was talking about God in AA. And so when I spoke to those, so what I'm going to end it this way, because I know we've got like no minutes left. So Sheldon says to me today, I did double down on all those guys. That was a lot of fun. So in any event, so Sheldon says to me today, he said, you know what your problem was? I don't even think you said it was a problem. You're actually pleased the way the whole thing turned out.
I was.
You see, here's the deal. I'm either going to give in to that shit, and I might as well drink or kill myself. But I'm either going to say, oh, really? They didn't like that? He says, okay, I won't talk about that much. I won't mention God that much. I'm either going to give in to that shit. And if I give in to that stuff, and not talking about God, what I'm saying is I'm really a phony piece of shit. And I can't be, I'm not steadfast. I'm unstable in all my ways, because if I give into that, I give into everything. I give my life away. You know what I mean? Or I stand firm. And the great thing is I can stand firm in the face of 40 men with 40 years sobriety. I can stand firm because they're not my God, because I know who God is. And because I know one thing, and only one thing, the same thing they were talking about in those 2 paragraphs, I can talk whatever the way I want to talk about at AA meetings or conventions or anything like that and not have to worry about what people think about me. You know, I can do that. I want you to be able to do that. I want you to be able to live a life of new freedom, not worried about stuff like that. You know, that's the deal. So Sheldon says to me, and when you start thinking that way, your whole life changes, that God is sovereign and he's real and he lives in your life in such a way that, and he guides you. And when you start thinking that way with that kind of faith, let me tell you what happens. The answers are clear. You don't know anything and you're not intelligent, but God gives you the wisdom to understand things. For instance, tonight, he walked up to me, and I'm not sure exactly how you said it. He said, you know, Les, I said what the real issue was with that deal is you weren't there for the first meeting of all these guys. These men, you were sleeping upstairs. So I was tired. You missed the first meeting where they did a countdown. Had you been to the first meeting, you would have seen that you had 50 guys in that place and they all had 30 and 40 years. You went down there and you started talking to them like you were talking to the 12-step house.
I did not say that.
Oh, whatever the fuck you said. Who cares? It's a good story. Don't blow it, you know? That's what I heard, you know what I mean? So, well, whatever. If you had known who you were talking to, you know? I said, Sheldon, did you ever think that since God is sovereign, because I think God is sovereign, protecting me and telling me, did you ever think that God deliberately wanted me to sleep through that so I wouldn't know who I was talking to? He says, you treated them like they had 1 year. I said, maybe God wanted me to treat them like they had 1 year. Maybe these guys who are too enamored with having 40 years or 30 years, maybe they need to be treated like they had 1 year. You know, you ever think about that? Yeah, you probably had something to say, but you didn't say it. So, in any event, that's all I have to say. You're really